Thank you for viewing this YouTube archive of a Conscious Consumer Network broadcast. Please feel free to share it far and wide. Check out our weekly broadcast guide for weekly updates on scheduled broadcasts. Help keep us on the air by contributing to our network support fund. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter or get in touch via email. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
Good evening. My name is Melvi, and this is Conscious Consumer Network live on the 17th of March, and it is 9 p.m. GMT, and that makes it 10 p.m. local time here in the Netherlands. So a big welcome to everybody who has tuned into the live show. Please feel free to follow along in the chat alongside the live stream screen, and feel free to send in any questions you might have throughout the course of this particular program. And we are, of course, very grateful to still be here. We've been very blessed this week with having many of our prayers answered with the most recent fundraising campaign that we did to save CCN within 7 days. That was met. So I didn't want to start tonight's show on a shared screen because I really wanted to, I suppose, address everybody face-to-face and say how very, very grateful we are for the huge amount of support that we've received here at CCN. And it's really shown us the value that we have to a lot of people, and we will continue to keep going, putting out good information and bringing you some amazing people and amazing solutions, which are all making themselves ever more present as we continue on this journey of discovery. So I'm going to begin tonight's presentation. Let me share the screen here for just 1 second. Now, I've been talking quite a lot recently a bit about what's been going on with regards to South Africa. And I know most national audience might be a little bit tired of hearing about this, but it really is a subject that is so dear to my heart because as many people are starting to discover, what's happening in South Africa will soon be happening in the rest of the world. Now, I've been saying this for a very long time, and in fact, today I had the great opportunity to speak with my dear friend Ed Begley. He's a singer in a band called Tattoo Billy, and he's in the United States, and he's been a Boer activist, or I should say an anti-Boer genocide activist for the last 10 years. And he's done a lot to raise awareness internationally about the Boer cause and how the Boers have been genocided off. Now, for those who don't know, the word Boer is just a Dutch word for farmer. So when we talk about the Boers, it's simply a group of people who have been farmers and are still farmers. And in fact, one of the things we talk about quite a lot when we talk about South Africa is we talk about farm murders and the Boers being killed out, and that the ruling government want to kill the Boers and kill all the farmers. And this is something we've covered off quite extensively and will continue to do so. And for those who want to learn a little bit more about it, please feel free to download a free ebook copy of my book, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy. It is banned in South Africa, so it's available on this website here, stopsouthafricangenocide.org. This, of course, is the new interactive portal that we have created. And, of course, there's various bits and pieces that you can participate in. There's forums going, and there's some people already interacting. There's articles being uploaded as fast as I can write them. We're pretty busy, but I do understand that not everybody has done the depth of research that I've done, and not anyone is really tied it into South Africa quite the way I have, and I've realized the need to kind of put this into its own website because it's really worth constantly putting this into the public consciousness, taking the time to write these articles and making sure that I'm circulating them through social media so that people can get a grasp of what's going on and an understanding from coming in at many different perspectives, because there's so many ways in which you can really attack this information. It's not an easy thing to go at in a linear fashion. So that is the hope with the stopsouthafricangenocide.org website. I hope that I'll be able to populated with a lot of really interesting articles and research that I've been engaged in for many years now as an investigative journalist. So please, guys, do check that out. And as I said, you can get a free ebook copy of my book, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy, Book 1, Light and Dark. It's available over on this website. You just have to scroll down the page, and it's on the right-hand side. Just click on it. It's right there. And this kind of gives you a sort of a background introduction as to what's kind of happening in South Africa and how it ties into a global context. And this is why I keep banging on about South Africa. What people need to understand, and if you read my book, you'll get an understanding of this. South Africa is a political testing ground, and it always has been. They try out policies there, and they do things there, and then you'll see it playing out in other parts of the world. So this is why we need to pay attention to what's going on there, the radicalization, the things that's happening there, because what you see happening there, if it's successful, they roll it out in other parts of the world. So when we talk about some of the things that's going on in South Africa, you can be sure that it'll be happening in the United States pretty soon and in Europe. And it's interesting, I just mentioned I was talking to Ed Begley today, and one of the things he said is, Mel, when you first told me what goes on in Africa will eventually be happening in other places, I didn't believe you, but I've seen it for myself because I've known Ed now for several years. He was featured in my film, The Last of the Boers, which has actually been removed from YouTube, and we are in the process of remaking it, which is why I was interviewing Ed today. And he's actually noticed what I've been saying, that what happens in South Africa does actually end up happening in other places, which is why it's so important, everybody, please, to pay attention to what is going on here. And it's not just because I'm South African. I think I've been uniquely positioned as having been born in South Africa for a specific reason, because I'm on this particular journey. And so that I can see what's happening and perhaps use my voice and my platform to inform, educate, warn people, and hopefully give them the correct information, because let me tell you something now, the mainstream media certainly is not doing that. So before I kind of climb into tonight's repertoire of information, and it's not going to be too hardcore because it is rather heavy, so I won't make it too long. I have to pay homage to and honors and just a great amount of love, and show a deep amount of sadness for this list of people who have been murdered on their farms. This is just a few days in March, and as you can see, I don't even know this is a complete list, but this has been given to me by Adriana, the lady who compiles the Censor Bugbear website, which is one of the most comprehensive records of farm murders or Boer genocide that there is out there. She's got quite a good team who works with her, who checks on everything and puts this stuff together. So I spoke with her yesterday, and it really is great to know that there are people that dedicated to keeping an accurate record of this genocide that's going on. So let's have a look at the people who have been killed on their farms just in the last few days. Okay, 5th of March, Anton Verwey, stabbed to death, 67 years old. 6th of March, Abraham Kukamur, strangled, he was 59. 7th of March, Casper van Westhuizen, 68, shot dead. 7th of March, Franziska Blochlicher, beg your pardon, Blochlicher, 16 only, raped and murdered. 7th of March, Paul Swart, 86, bludgeoned to death. An 86-year-old man bludgeoned to death. 9th of March, Mariki Meyer, 46 years old, bludgeoned to death. 9th of March, 9-year-old daughter of Meyer, so this is Mariki Meyer, the daughter, 9 years old, also bludgeoned to death. 9th of March, Kenneth McCormack, 42, bludgeoned to death. And of course, senior, most likely the father, 73, and also bludgeoned to death. And then on the 11th of March, Nico Raas, 34, shot dead. This is just yesterday. Another farm murder. Bredesdorp, an Afrikaans farmer, Cobus Visser, murdered supposedly by sheep thieves, and he was stabbed to death. And this is the reality of South Africa. Farm murders are happening every day. And there has just been such an overwhelming amount of them that has gone on that it's not something that can be ignored anymore. Because soon there will be no more farmers left. That's the reality. The ones who are, there are so many of them already looking to leave the country. We've had a delegation going over to Bulgaria, trying to get farmers resettled in Bulgaria. Okay, we've got people here, myself, working frantically to get better circumstances for the migration of people with South African passports and get restrictions lifted. So there's a lot of people who are leaving, a lot of farmers who are leaving the country, and I'll get into one of the reasons why. It's because there's not much left for them. Okay, it's been made very, very difficult. And the ones that aren't being killed are getting out before they are killed, them and their families. And it's very sad because soon there'll be no more farmers left. And when there are no farmers, there is no more food. And well, this is what happened to Zimbabwe not even 10 years ago. Like all the farmers are being killed off and the ones that weren't killed off left. And it's a really sad, desperate situation there, okay? What you've got is starvation. You've got complete starvation going on in Zimbabwe. There's no farmers, so there's no food. So my question is these people that are doing all the killing, okay, let's look at who they are. I talk about this. I've actually written an article about this, and maybe I'll go out the share screen onto another screen to show you guys. But let's talk about who these guys are, okay? The Uhuru cult. Sorry, I just I get very emotional about this. This is my people that I grew up with who are being murdered here. The Uhuru cult, over here, Uhuru it says. Very interesting word, this Uhuru, okay? I wrote a lovely article this week for the website stopsouthafricangenocide.org, and it speaks about this. Now, as you said, it's all about killing the Boer, and the Boer means farmer, okay? And what is interesting to notice is that the majority black government has decided that all Boers and Afrikaners are to be considered racist. So if you're a Boer and Afrikaner, they automatically just classify you as racist. It doesn't matter, they haven't sat down to interview you or find out what your political views are or if you like black people or not. They just have decided that if you're Afrikaner or you're a Boer, you're racist. And the Uhuru cult, therefore, has the right to engage in violent torture and sacrifice against all racists. And this is the kind of literature that gets passed around. Attention, comrades. You notice this fist sign. You see a lot of the African leaders doing this. It's all, this is a communist sign, okay? And they talk about, kill the Boer. Boer means farmer. Kill the racist. Kill the Afrikaner. They associate them as all the same thing. And it's interesting that the word racist is just being broadly swept applied to anybody who happens to be a farmer or happens to speak the Afrikaans language. And Afrikaans is merely a derivative of Dutch. Okay, so it's a Dutch language that has evolved into Afrikaans, and the Dutch language has also evolved since it was similar to Afrikaans. There's a lot of words now that are very different as Dutch language has evolved, and living in Holland I can tell the difference between the two. So let me just pop out here and actually go have a look at this. I really want to come and have a look at this Uhuru cult and just see, did you guys see for yourselves, stop share, what is really going on with these guys, because it's a pretty scary state of affairs, okay? I wrote this article here. South Africa is besieged by murderous satanic cults. And I've got a quote here from Ephesians 6, verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly places. Now, I would sincerely recommend you guys go watch my series Dragonology, Seasons 1, Episode 1 through 13, and Seasons 2, Episode 1 through 13. And it gives you a much clearer explanation of what we're talking about here. Okay, absolutely everything we've spoken about. Dark forces, heavenly places, wickedness, all of that kind of thing. The flesh and blood, it all gets covered in great detail in my series Dragonology. And just to give you a little excerpt from this article, I wrote, the true danger of cults cannot be underestimated, and that is because most people don't even know they're in a cult. There are various practices of cultism which have evolved into many different daily rituals that we engage in without knowing what we are paying our energetic currency into. We have absolutely no idea as to the dark side that we are empowering with our acquiescence and tacit consent in unknowing cult ritual worship of the darkness that plagues our beautiful planet. These cults cast spells which seeds darkness, hatred, anger, and resentment between men and women, of course. To get a thorough grasp of the subject, please take some time to read my series Dragonology. I beg your pardon, watch my series Dragonology. It's an extensive and detailed study on spells, cult, and ritual, and gives the reader a vast knowledge and context for all the information I put forward. One of the most important facts to grasp up front is that all cults are connected, often through various well-distanced intermediaries. And as they are all connected, they are ultimately all controlled from the very top by the same dark forces. Cults take on many different labels and identities, often engaging in a variety of practices outwardly so as to mask the true purpose and function of that particular cult. The true danger lies in just how the cult mindset has been programmed into our culture through words, spells, and rituals. Now let's look at what the Uhuru cult is. The term Uhuru was first seeded into the consciousness of South Africans by a Boer cultural icon, a so-called seer or visionary by the name of Sinner van Rensburg, who accurately predicted many events that have unfolded long after his death. The word Uhuru is a native African word referencing a ritual mass sacrifice or slaughter, one tribe against the other. Now, apparently, Sinner van Rensburg spoke about after Nelson Mandela died, there would be something called the Night of the Long Knives, or Uhuru, as he called it, which basically is what we're looking at now, the mass slaughter of white South Africans. And I'll carry on to read here. The Boers are known as the original white tribe of South Africa, and the flames of the Uhuru cult are being flamed and fanned to kill them, often in the most gruesome fashion. It cannot be denied as being anything other than an outright cultural genocide or ethnic cleansing. The patterns of this is obvious and all too similar to events of the past, as they are largely perpetrated with the same methods and for the same purposes by the same dark forces. So why are the farm killings so violent and gruesome? The controllers of the dark side feed off low vibrational energetic frequencies, which are best obtained through creating maximum suffering. And that's why there's so much suffering on this planet. It's to feed the dark forces that control all the enslavement and everything. Okay, or to put it more simply, the more pain and suffering, the more food gets created for the devil. Another way of putting it is that we are feeding the dark side. And no, I'm not a religious fanatic or Star Wars fanatic. A collective dark force is orchestrating all this misery and suffering, and it does not necessarily stop at a human level. There is energetics at work on many different levels and in multiple dimensions beyond what most people can perceive with their five senses or limited education. Think about this for 1 minute. If a clandestine group such as the Illuminati are controlling all the conflict from behind the scenes and have done so for hundreds, if not thousands of years, then how does their tradition continue generation after generation when each generation dies out? Because that which controls the human level of the controllers of the clandestine agenda is not human. Rather, it is immortal, or it lives a hell of a lot longer than we do. What that or those specific entities are, or what form they take, or where they live, is very much up for debate. I've put forward my findings in my series Dragonology, and I hope this gives the reader some clearer indication as to what we're up against. This may be frightening for many to face, especially when you start to realize the true ugly nature of the beast and just how much we as human beings play into it with our daily activities. If we are ever to change the world, we must first look to ourselves and how we go about our lives in order to effect change on the microcosm. We simply cannot hope to win over the forces of darkness if we continue to empower them. Right, I'm going to go back to the other screen. Stop. Share. Okay. So this is where we are at the moment. As we see here, the Uhuru is mentioned in the pamphlets that go around telling people to kill the racist, kill the Boer, kill the Afrikaner, because it's the Uhuru cult. This is this cult that has engaged in violent torture and sacrifice of the Boer and Afrikaners. And with no farmers, no Boers, there will be no food, and it will end up, just do yourselves a favor. Anybody wants to go and do a search, go write Zimbabwe starvation and see how many articles come up just in the last week that have been written about how dire a situation we're looking at in Zimbabwe. People are starving, okay? They are absolutely starving. And that is quite simply because there's no food. Why? No farmers. And it's a no-brainer. Guess why? Because the ones you didn't kill, you chased out the country. So what we're saying is, if you guys, whoever is running South Africa, you guys continue to kill off all the farmers, eventually you're going to get starved out too. I don't know where you think your food is coming from. Because let me tell you what, the United Nations and everybody else are actually not interested in helping you. And this guy here, Robert Mugabe, dictator Zimbabwe for almost 3 decades. This guy is without a doubt a Vatican puppet. I've spoken about many times in my book and in various presentations about how the global conspiracy control web is laid out, with the Vatican obviously very high up there. And Mugabe has many knighthoods. He was stripped of several of them by Queen Elizabeth, but he still holds several knighthoods. And supposedly for being the dictator of Zimbabwe, the international community put a travel ban on him, which basically was lifted by the Vatican when he was invited there to attend the beatification of the late Pope John Paul II. That's right. He was invited to attend the beatification of Pope John Paul II. Now, for those of you who don't know what beatification is, it's a religious ritual, a ceremony, a cult ceremony, which basically is one step before being declared a saint. So you have to be beatified before you can be made into a saint. And it's a whole process that they go through when you're dead and you're in the afterlife. And in fact, if you go into the catacombs of the Vatican, you'll see lots of these patron saints and stuff that have had their entire skeletons adorned with gold and jewels because they're saints. And this is the kind of thing they do to saints, is they worship them long after they're dead, their corpses and stuff. It's quite a gruesome thing, but this is the kind of stuff they engage in. It's not spiritual enlightenment at all. In fact, it's quite dark and satanic. And this is the whole point behind it, is to keep on this dark, low vibrational frequency, to feed the negativity, to feed the dark entities that perpetuate all the suffering from multiple dimensions. And this guy here, of course, is a Vatican puppet, multiple knighthoods, and knights are loyal to the Vatican. They serve the Vatican power structure. So if you know anybody who has been knighted or has any kind of honorary knighthood, that means that they are loyal to the Vatican or subjects of the Vatican. Now, I want to talk about the refugee crisis that's going on in context with what I've spoken about with regards to white South Africans, many of them leaving South Africa as refugees. Myself, I'm a refugee. I've left South Africa with my whole family behind there, and I've been homesick for the last 18 years of my life. But I left because I went to seek better opportunities, because I didn't see my chances of survival as being very good there. At the time, I just graduated from media. In fact, when I went to university, first year of uni was 1994, and that was the year that Nelson Mandela was made President of South Africa. By the time I'd come out of university, the writing was on the wall, and I knew that if I actually wanted a career in media, I'd have to go overseas or just have an unfulfilled life and have some job that I would hate. And I did. I left my whole family, all my friends, 23 years of my life, and went to London. And I haven't gone back. I've been back for holidays to visit family and whatnot over the years, but I have not been back since 2010. I don't know if I can go back because my book is banned, and they have a lot of issues now, as I will talk about as we go on, so it's probably not a good idea for me to ever go back there. But the problem is, like me, and I consider myself a refugee because I sought refuge in a foreign land, away from the turmoil and the lack of survival opportunity in South Africa. Sought better opportunity, better survival opportunity, like many people do. Everybody has the right to survive. And, being in that position where I have had to do that, I really sympathize with the refugee crisis that's going on at the moment. Having to relocate to a foreign land, and because you are seeking refuge in a way, even though to some people it may not seem that way, that's exactly what it was. It doesn't matter how many fluffy bows and pretty frills we want to put on the situation. For me, the heartache is probably exactly what these people experience. Very minimal possessions with them, a couple of bags. That's what I had when I came over, and that's what I started with, not much. They come over with very little, except when I came over, I was lucky enough to land myself in a youth hostel with 18 other South Africans in the same room as me, and we actually ended up having a bit of a party. But that's when you're a backpacker. It's different, I suppose, when you've got your family, your kids, and you're being put into these detention centers, and the conditions are appalling, subhuman conditions, really. And, there's a lot of resentment going on here in Europe, to the point where it's so frightening. It's so frightening to see what's going on and to see how angry people are about the refugees coming over. In fact, I'll go on to comment about this a bit more. I've got a couple of videos I thought I'd play just to give you guys an idea of exactly what I'm talking about. First, we've got a video that shows the refugee crisis here in Holland, and also we've got a video talking about how in Sweden, Sweden of all places are generally very peaceful and chill out place. They've gone and burnt down a whole bunch of refugee centers. So when you're ready, Biggie.
Mevrouw de voorzitter, het is op een dramatisch en beslissend moment in onze geschiedenis dat ik het woord tot u richt. Nederland wordt geconfronteerd met een islamitische volksverhuizing. Honderdduizenden migranten stromen naar Europa. En dit is nog maar het begin. Iedere dag komen er meer. Volgens de Verenigde Naties gaat het om miljoenen en miljoenen.
In Rotterdam is het onrustig geweest bij een bijeenkomst over de komst van een asielzoekerscentrum. Een kleine groep railschoppers gooide stenen naar de politie. 3 mensen zijn opgepakt.
Verzet in de wijk Beverwaard tegen de komst van 600 vluchtelingen. Een groepje jongeren stak vuurwerk af en gooide met stenen. Eerder sprak burgemeester Abu Taleb zo'n 500 buurtbewoners toe.
We zijn gewend in Rotterdam, ook als we met elkaar niet eens zijn, door naar elkaar te luisteren. Dus
Nou deelt u in ons dorp, want het is een dorp op zich, 600 man. U heeft het over 600 man op de hele bevolking van Rotterdam. Dat is het niet. Het is 600 man op de bevolking van de Beverwaard, IJsselmonde.
De eerste, de beste, die mij aanraakt, 's morgens om 6:30, als ik op mijn fiets ga, naar de thuiszorg. Nou, echt hè, die hebben een groot probleem.
Het is onbestaanbaar dat in ons Rotterdam mensen buiten slapen waar ze ook vandaan komen.
We staan hier echt voor niks. Het is al besloten. Het maakt niet uit wat we zeggen. We hebben geen brief gekregen.
mensen die vluchtelingen zijn, snap ik. Als mensen door 7 landen kruisen om hier te komen, dan denk ik, hoezo vluchteling?
Herstel de rechterflank iets meer naar links toe uitgullen. Charge. Herstel de linie.
We hebben een gevarieerd programma, we gaan zelfs nog een keer van tafel wisselen. Maar eerst wat ons verder opviel vandaag. Tumultueuze bijeenkomsten zijn het. De informatieavonden door het land waar bewoners op de hoogte worden gebracht van voorgenomen asielzoekerscentra. Een informatiebijeenkomst over het geplande AZC in Rotterdam-Beverwaard verliep buitengewoon rumoerig.
Als ik op vakantie ga, krijg ik spuitjes, wil ik net een speldenkussen. Worden die mensen ook gecontroleerd op virussen en weet ik wat allemaal? Ebola, pleuris, tering, tyfus, maakt niet wat. Gaat u er ook voor garanderen dat dochters van deze mensen veilig over straat gaan in een rokkie en dat ze dadelijk niet hier in een fucking park met de benen wijd leggen? Ik werk vanaf mijn 16e in de Rotterdamse haven. Om mijn huis te kopen, wat is hij nou nog waard? Wat is mijn leven waard?
Dit zijn de zogenaamde verontruste burgers, of de maatschappelijk teleurgestelde burgers, of de boze burgers, of welke benamingen er nog meer voor zijn. In ieder geval zijn ze mondig of schreeuwerig, of hoe je het verder ook wil noemen. Dit zijn spandoeken vanmiddag in Steenbergen, waar ook heel smaakvol de verzetstrijders van Geert tevergeefs op hem wachten, want hij moest in Den Haag blijven. Als jullie nou allemaal zo naar kijken, Johan en Jan, wat vind je ervan, Johan Derksen?
Nou, ik schaam me wel eens dan dat ik een Nederlander ben. Kijk, als een of andere domhoer van de PVV zoiets roept, dan neem je dat voor kennisgeving aan. Maar als je dit soort geluiden iedere dag uit je tv hoort komen, dat vind ik heel beangstigend.
Ja. Jan?
Mogelijk. Ja. Als je dit ziet en je denkt dan van, ja kijk, dat mensen zich zorgen maken, dat weten we allemaal. Dat is prima, dat mag je ook uiten. Maar wat ik daar nu net hoor, en die spandoeken erbij, dit zet mensen tegen elkaar op. En als ik ook in de Tweede Kamer kijk hoe daar gereageerd wordt, hoe Wilders daar tekeer gaat. Ja, dat is echt wel iets om je zorgen over te maken.
Okay.
Wij zijn de nieuwe generatie hier zo. Wij zijn hier de generatie. Ja.
Die zit daar op school, man.
Ja, dat is jullie. Een katholieke school. Een katholieke school. Ziek hier. Ziek. En deze normale manier. En als het op een andere manier.
12 jaar is genoeg als onze kinderen neuken, hè? Ik heb 3 dochters. Staan jullie daarvoor in? Nee, hè? Sukkels. Ik hoop dat ze jullie dochters...
En de Polen dan!
En de Polen hebben respect, die zijn bras. Ja, die hebben respect, die werken netjes, die praten Nederlands. Ja? Polen passen zich graag aan, zijn katholiek. Heb je ooit iets gezien van Polen?
Mark Storm van D66 is een van de bedreigde raadsleden. Hij twittert de dreigbrief gisteravond. Wilt er nog even goed over nadenken of dat AZC er moet komen? Ik merk het wel en anders merkt u het ook.
Zo luidt de tekst. De betrokken raadsleden willen niet voor de camera met ons praten, maar Mark Storm laat telefonisch weten dat hij zegt, ja, dit kon je eigenlijk wel verwachten. Al heeft hij er wel een onheimisch gevoel bij. En Yvonne Hagenaars van de PvdA vindt het vooral erg dat ook haar 2 dochters betrokken worden in die brief, dat die bedreigd worden. Daar is ze erg van geschrokken, zegt ze. Maar aan de andere kant zegt ze ook, politiek is niet voor bange mensen. Het is voor haar niet eens de eerste keer dat ze is bedreigd. Premier Rutte vindt de dreigbrieven bizar, verschrikkelijk en verwerpelijk. De grens naar dreigen met geweld mag nooit overschreden worden. Dat is totaal onacceptabel, aldus de premier.
De politie houdt mensen tegen die de raadzaal in willen. De zaal zou vol zitten en dus worden deze toeschouwers geweigerd. De belangstellenden moeten een verdieping lager, naar de plek waar schermen zijn geplaatst. En na wat discussie doen ze dat ook.
Waarom wilt u per se naar binnen? Er zijn daar videoschermen geplaatst. U kunt gewoon het debat volgen.
Er werd gezegd dat we naar boven mochten. Ja, van er is plek zat. Dus de mensen hadden naar boven gekund. Dus wij gaan naar boven. En dan wordt er weer politie bijgehaald. Het is wel weer duidelijk wie hier de baas is natuurlijk. En dat zijn niet de mensen zelf. Geloof me nou.
Wat is hier democratisch aan? Niks.
En dus zit er niets anders op dan het debat vanaf het scherm te volgen. En daar lopen bij sommige tegenstanders van de opvang van vluchtelingen de emoties hoog op.
Ze denken gewoon dat wij achter de koeien vandaan komen. Dan stellen ze Jan Longlullen binnen.
Wat bedoelt u daarmee?
Ja, dat merkt toch aan alle kanten. Je wordt gewoon niet gehoord.
Volgens Kisa Makendane komt het verzet vooral door onbegrip. Hij vluchtte 8 jaar geleden naar Nederland.
Ik denk niet dat ik een gevaar voor Nederland ben. Dat geldt ook voor die meeste vluchtelingen. Ze komen hier om echt iets van hun leven te maken, niet voor de plezier.
Waar komt u oorspronkelijk vandaan?
Ik kom oorspronkelijk uit Congo, maar ik ben eigenlijk een Nederlander op dit moment.
Zo ziet u er ook uit trouwens.
Dankjewel.
De Arabische lente behelst een golf van opstanden, protesten en revoluties.
Thijs.
Maar media, dit is nou democratie. Dat kunnen jullie ook maar schrijven. Zo gaan ze ook met onze Nederlanders om.
Zonde, want je wilt toch weten wat er met je dorp gebeurt. Dus dat is eigenlijk de reden dat we eigenlijk toch naar boven zijn gegaan.
Want bij jou in de buurt komt zo'n asielzoekerscentrum?
Ja, in Scheveningen komt er in ieder geval één.
Well, the Swedes have had it with the Muslim invasion currently underway in their country. 9 refugee centers have been burnt to the ground to get the message across. No more Muslims. According to Jews News, refugee centers in Sweden are being burned to the ground in what appears to be a statement against the significant number of refugees the country has allowed in. The multiple arsons have all been at facilities which house or are slated to house immigrants. One could say that someone in Sweden is mad as hell and bringing fire and brimstone to the facilities that are going to be used for refugees. 7 arson fires have occurred, all which seem to be connected with immigrant centers. 2 more shelters intended for refugees went up in flames in Sweden, continuing a recent series of arson attacks that police believe are directed against arriving asylum seekers amidst the migrant crisis in Europe. In the latest incident, a children's summer camp in the Swedish town of, I'm not even going to say the name, Eskilstuna. Sorry if I butchered that. That town is now located 112 kilometers west of the country's capital of Stockholm. It was engulfed in flames. The camp was planned to host about 60 asylum seekers. Around the same time, another fire started in a refugee center in the town of Munkedal in southwestern Sweden, which had already been damaged by fire earlier in another suspected arson attack last week. However, that blaze was tackled quickly and nobody was injured because the area had been cordoned off after the previous incident. So Europeans are stepping up and they are not going to accept the migrants, the refugees that are coming in from the Middle East. It's very clear at this point that, I mean, we have another story that's coming up that's going to blow your mind too, but this is another escalation element on the world stage. When you look at, refugee centers being burned down, you see Russia amping up its airstrikes in the Middle East, and now Obama is sending troops and warthogs and Apache helicopters into Syria or Iraq. That whole region is completely in chaos, and it's only going to get worse, it seems. What do you think about this? Do you think the Swedes did the right thing by burning down these refugee centers? Curious to know what your thoughts are. Leave your comments below. I read every comment, so I'm really interested to see what you think about this. And if you like what we're doing here, hit the share button. That's your endorsement of the Next News Network. I'm Gary Franchi.
As you can see, some pretty disturbing scenes coming from Europe when it comes to dealing with the refugee crisis. Now, I just want to tackle a couple of points here because this is pretty controversial territory. Of course, people, when you live in your home country and suddenly, if you're on benefits, you're a pensioner and you're relying on the government to pay you your government pension or whatever, and a whole bunch of refugees rock up and suddenly there's cuts in your benefits and cuts in your pensions because the government now decides it wants to take a whole bunch of the money that's supposed to go to you, you've been living there your whole life, and give it to some foreigners who suddenly rocked up in your land. You can understand why this is, annoying people. However, what people don't seem to understand is that we always have to put ourselves in the other person's position at all times, okay? And I'm one of those people that can do that because I myself am a refugee. So I live in Holland and I see all these people getting very pissed off with refugees around me. And, I just keep quiet about the fact that I am myself a refugee. Thankfully, I am of European descent. So I kind of blend in looks-wise. I don't look like a Muslim and I'm not dark-skinned. So they kind of don't really think of me as a refugee, but that's what I am. And so I kind of watched and observed other people carry on about refugees, and I'm pretty horrified about it, okay? Because, yeah, I get that they don't want these people coming over here and taking their jobs and their money and this and that. And there's so little to go around anyway. But what most people are forgetting to recognize is the fact that the refugee crisis is actually a symptom, okay? There is stuff that happens before people become refugees. Do you think, for example, that if I had a choice, I'd be living in Holland? I'd much rather be living in my home country of South Africa. Just like many of these people who are refugees who leave their home country and have to then go and find a way to exist somewhere else. I'm sure they'd much rather be in their home country with warmer climates, with their culture, not having to be in detention centers or refugee asylum centers. They'd much rather be doing that. But the simple fact is it's not necessarily always a circumstantial choice that they have to stay behind. Sometimes they choose to seek a better life. And we all have the right to do that. And nobody has the right to deny anybody the choice or chance of survival. So I get pretty annoyed when I see the way the childish behavior that's been going on with people burning down refugee detention centers and stuff like that, because, it's not the refugees' fault that they have to leave their home and come to foreign land. I will get into where the root cause of this problem is, okay, in just a minute. But it's important to know that the refugee crisis is not just a Syrian thing. Suddenly there's Syrian refugees pouring into Europe. Okay, it's not just a Muslim thing. Okay, suddenly you've got Muslim refugees pouring into Europe, and all the Europeans are worried that the Muslim men are going to come wreck their daughters. And it's just gone to such extreme measures. I know a lot of Muslim people, and they're very gentle, very sweet people, honestly. Not all Muslim men are going to rape non-Muslim women. It's just the allegories and the allegations and the fear and the separatist identification that's going on is all building up to civil war. And you'll notice there is a build-up to civil war going on in a number of key places across the world. It's happening in America. It's happening here in Europe. It's definitely happening in South Africa. We've discussed that quite a bit recently. And what's interesting to notice is with all of these civil wars going on, suddenly there's a lot of refugees trying to escape war to other countries. And that's, of course, causing more problems. But what is interesting to notice is that with all the refugee crises going on all over the world, the one thing that people are forgetting to recognize is that white South Africans are just simply not seen as refugees, okay? South Africa is, in fact, a war zone. The violent crime, rape, and murder rate in South Africa statistically makes it a war zone. Many are fleeing, but white South Africans are not considered refugees. So if you do not have a South African if you have a South African passport, that is, you do not have a passport from Britain, Canada, America, England, Australia, New Zealand, you do not have one of those kind of passports, a European passport or an Australian passport, anything else except a South African passport, it is almost near enough impossible for you to go to another country and live there without going through a huge amount of difficulty. Okay. You can go there as a tourist, you can apply for tourist visa, but you have to leave after 3 months. Now, this is where there's a great injustice, is that you've got a lot of European countries accepting fleeing Syrian refugees, okay? Not white, Muslim, okay? So not even necessarily the majority European culture, which is not necessarily Muslim, and not necessarily the same racial background in terms of color, if you even want to look at it like that. However, you got white South Africans who are of European descent, who many of them would like to leave, but it's so difficult to do with a South African passport. Okay, so many of them are looking to leave. Some of them have a little bit tucked away so that they can do so, because many people have seen this coming for a while. A lot of people have already begun the process of selling everything and liquidating assets so that they can get out. Now, the problem is, if you've got a South African passport, it's near enough impossible to go live in another country. They don't like South Africans for some reason. They don't want us living in their countries. And we certainly cannot claim refugee status. There's been a number of white South Africans who have fled abroad, and there's been so many cases of white South Africans claiming refugee status in the countries that they've landed in. And I mean, apart from maybe 1 or 2 rare cases in Ireland, which have allowed South Africans to claim European refugee status, there have been absolutely no other countries who have allowed it. America's not allowing it, Canada's not allowing it, neither is New Zealand, neither is Australia. And at the moment, neither is Europe, not accepting white South Africans as refugees, cannot claim refugee status. So unless you have a European passport, you're pretty much stuck in South Africa. And this is one of the big campaigns that I've been going on at the moment. I've written several letters, sent them all around. They went viral. And it was a campaign to get restrictions lifted on South African passports for those South Africans who are able, who are financially able and willing to leave the country because they are fearing for their lives or are in imminent danger, which is very clear that they are, all right, for them to be able to come to Europe because they are of European descent, all right? They came from the original settlers that came to Africa who were European descent, and they should be allowed to return to the place where their ancestors originally came from. It shouldn't be a matter of, oh, you don't have the right paperwork, sorry, you don't have the right book, you know, and for that reason, you should probably just stay in South Africa and be genocided off. It's not acceptable to me. I think that's bureaucracy at its worst. That is a system so utterly failing people. Look, it's failing us to begin with that people have to flee the country they were born in. Most South Africans, given the choice, I'm sure would much rather stay in their home country, not have the violence and crime and not be genocided out. I think that would be their first choice. But since it is so dangerous, you know, many of them would like the opportunity to leave, but are not considered refugees in foreign countries. So it makes things very difficult and very complicated. There's a couple of obvious contradictions which needs to be dealt with at this point, okay? First off, white South Africans are being told to leave the country by the African National Congress, which is the ruling majority party of South Africa. That's Nelson Mandela's party. They've been in power for quite a while now, well over a decade, 2 decades almost. And then you've got, it is 2 decades now, wow. Okay, then you've got the Diplomatic Alliance, who was led under Helen Zille for a long time. So we had a white face heading up the Diplomatic Alliance, and that got all the white votes. And, you know, it was the opposition to the ANC. So they got, everyone that didn't like the ANC can go vote for the Diplomatic Alliance. But now Helen Zille is no longer running the thing. And you've got another guy there who's very much jumped on the, whites must leave the country bandwagon, and, you know, whites are bad and racist and this and that, which, of course, is not good. The bottom line is you can't have every black person labeling every white person as bad or racist or responsible for all the problems in South Africa. It's beyond insanity to do such a thing, to just brush stroke a whole entire, you know, genetic group of people and say you're all responsible for all of our problems. You know, it's kind of like shifting the blame, you know. We don't want to actually sort the problems out, so we're just going to blame you guys and kill you all off, and then we're going to realize actually the problems are all still there, and they've gotten worse because there's nobody to run the infrastructure or grow the crops. So now we're going to all starve, and this is what's going on. Very obvious contradictions. Whites are being told to leave the country. Okay, you've got farmers being killed off, but there's no more food, all right? And here's the other thing. The South African government have started to create a blacklist which prohibits anybody they consider to be racist from traveling. Now remember, who's considered to be racist? Anybody that's considered to be a Boer or an Afrikaner is labeled as racist, just because of the language they speak or the fact that they might be a farmer. Doesn't matter what the outlook is on black or white and equality. That's never taken into consideration. They never even ask those questions. They're just labeled as racist. So if they're considered to be racist, then they will be prohibited from traveling. And the South African government say that the reason they're doing this is to stop the racist liars from going overseas and spreading lies about South Africa. Well, let me tell you something, dear old South African government. There just happens to be something called the internet. And it doesn't matter how much you prohibit people that you want to label as racist from traveling, the truth is still getting out, and we are still making it known exactly what it is you are doing to people, because this is deliberate entrapment, okay? You're telling them that they either leave or they will be killed, but you won't let them leave. So bottom line is you want them trapped so you can kill them, all right? It's double standards all the way around, because guess what? If you're black, you cannot be racist in South Africa. It's not considered fathomable. It's okay for blacks to want to chase whites out of the country, want to exclude whites from the job market, want to kill all the whites off. But should it be the opposite? Should a white person want to exclude blacks from the job market, for example? They're considered racist. You can't do that. That's apartheid stuff. But isn't that what the blacks are doing to the whites now in South Africa? This is where we're at. A full-on racial conflict is brewing, and it's being very well orchestrated, okay? Because there's a lot of double standards, and the power's being thrown all behind one side while a minority group is being wiped out. And as I said, blacks cannot be considered racist. Only white Afrikaners / Boers can be considered racist. So if you're considered a racist, you'll be stopped from traveling. Blacks can't be considered racist, only whites can. So basically they're saying that if you're an Afrikaner boy, you will be stopped from traveling. But they don't want you in the country anyways, but they're trapping you there. Because the reality is, I mean, I'm sorry to say this, they don't want you gone, they want you dead. That is the truth. And it's very obvious with all these contradicting policies and the various rhetorics that are coming about. Kind of have to look at what it's all pointing at. This is how things stand at the moment in South Africa. The government can take your property. No farms can be inherited. When the current owners of the farms that exist now, when the current owners die, that farm reverts back to the state. So, for example, people who have farms now have kids are sending their kids abroad because there's nothing left for them. Once the owners of that farm die out, those kids cannot get that farm. They don't get the money from that farm because you can't sell it. So, I think the smart thing to do is just to sell the farms anyway now while you're alive, get the money, and do something else with it, because it's going to be worthless when you die. It's not going to give your kids anything. All right? It's got to go back to the state. The kids don't get to have it. So you've worked your whole life to build this business, this property up, and you can't even pass it on to your children because it reverts back to the government once you die. That's what's happened. So the government can take your property. There's no more passing on of farms when people die. And, of course, there's a white genocide happening. Right? A number of insane and ridiculous amount of people being killed off. And I have gone through this before. It's not just a white genocide, it's a black genocide as well. It's just the methodologies differ, okay? And there is a reason for that. And I've been through this as well extensively as to why the methodologies differ with regards to these two different groups of cultural genocides, both happening side by side, simultaneously in the same country, and yet these two groups are fighting each other instead of focusing on the people who are manipulating the genocide from a much higher level. It is all pernicious and it's all manipulated, and people have to stop fighting each other and realize what's really going on. So, as we said, it's a case where white South Africans are being told they have to get out, that they don't belong there, that the Europeans stole the land from the Africans, but many whites can't leave as they're on a blacklist because apparently they're racist just because they're farmers or Afrikaners or, don't support the African National Congress government and their policies. So you can see there's a lot of deliberate entrapment going on, and it's pretty scary because this manipulation is deliberately designed to trap a specific group in a specific place so that they can't get away. Remember, the Boers, and I've been through this previously, the Boers were escapees from Europe. They escaped the Holy Office of the Inquisition, the Roman Catholic Church, and came to settle down in South Africa. And this is all their descendants now that are being wiped out, right? Very clever. Let's trap them in one place so we can get rid of them all, and then we're done with our Holy Inquisition. Because those are the last of the escapees from the Holy Inquisition. As I said earlier, we need to look at the root cause. The issue is not the refugees. And as I said, there's many white South African refugees out there. Refugees don't just come in one color. The issue is not the refugees. The issue is the circumstances that create the refugees, okay? And war is the main cause of refugees. Absolutely, we have to look for the root cause which causes the problem, because at the moment all we're seeing is the symptom. The refugees, they're just a symptom. Okay, they're not the problem. Everyone's saying, oh, they're going ballistic. You saw those videos of what's happening here in Holland. But, all those people going ballistic about the refugees coming over, guess what, right? You're paying taxes. You're paying for those wars. Okay, you're paying for the problem that has been created, right? It's your fault. It's absolutely the fault of anybody who pays taxes. They have no right to complain about the refugees being here, because your tax money is literally in the bullets and bombs that kill people, right? You're funding the armed forces with your tax money. So when the armed forces go off and just, bomb countries, and then suddenly all those people come here, wanting to escape being killed off, can you blame them? And how dare we blame them? I mean, we paid for that mayhem. This is what people don't realize. The bottom line is, The war industry is extremely profitable to the psychopathic, murderous cabal who control the planet's resources due to constant war. And this is how it's controlled. It's controlled due to constant war. That's how you control the planet, all right? With fear and war and money, of course. And war is very profitable. It makes a very few very sick people a lot of money, and they care nothing about who they destroy. They really don't. Okay, and war is absolutely planned and deliberately orchestrated. War is wanted and planned by the cabal. Agents provocateurs are at work to create conflicts as pretexts to war. And this is what we've seen in the university riots that have been going on in South Africa. Very clear evidence, and many people saying, we didn't even really know what this is all about. This is very clearly the work of people who want to destabilize the country. It's already been picked up on that this is in fact the case. And they create, let's get annoyed about something, student fees, or, how badly the workers are treated, or this or that. And they create grievances, and they seed these grievances into people and get them all whipped up into a frenzy with hatred and get them acting like mass mob mentality. Let's throw things, let's burn things, let's destroy things, We're trying to, create a better South Africa, but we're going to destroy it first. It just doesn't make sense. And don't forget, as I always say, it was on the basis of Uitlander grievances that the British decided to go to war with the Boers at the turn of the 20th century. Now, the Uitlander grievances were largely fabricated, and many of the Uitlanders spoke about how they used to pass the papers around to see what their grievances were, because they didn't really know what they were until they read them in the papers. And it seemed that the British were using the grievances of the Uitlanders, which the Uitlanders didn't even really have, as a reason to go to war with the Boers. And fake grievances are historically seeded as pretexts to war. And this is what we're seeing, are these grievances within the universities at various levels. I've spoken about this in my book. Universities are the place where the shadow government operate from, both in terms of recruiting people, but also in terms of the organizations they have there. Trust me, there is one massive think tank at Wits University. You've also got things like the Brenthurst Foundation, which is very, very closely associated with a number of universities, also a massive think tank. The Rhodes Foundation, of course, Rhodes was a major contributor to the roundtable organizations such as the Council of Foreign Relations and Bilderberg Group, all the various roundtable organizations that make up the shadow governments of the planet. So it's all interconnected, it's all interlinked, and it's all about orchestrating war for the purposes of profit. Plain and simple, war bucks. Okay? And they whip people into a frenzy. Yeah, war, can you feel it? Because you know what? It's so profitable. It is so profitable. All you've got to do is follow the money. Your suffering is about profit. That's the bottom line. And people think, we're suffering because it's his fault, because he's a different color to me, and therefore we got to hate them and kill them and drive them out the country. No, you're looking at the wrong thing. It's about profit. All of us are suffering because it's profitable to make us suffer. Don't forget, it's profitable to keep us sick. The drug companies, well, they wouldn't want us to be a healthy population now, would they? How would that benefit them? Then we wouldn't need their drugs and medicines. So they keep us sick with bad food from people like Monsanto, and then we keep the drug companies in business. And it's all a vicious circle, because at the very top, all these psychopathic elitist cabals who are making so much money off human suffering, they're all working together to make it all happen. It's a very well orchestrated machine. Guess what, guys? We're turning the wheels of that machine with our acquiescence, with our energetic currency, with our participation, and, of course, with our tax money. All lives matter. Absolutely. Even the lives of refugees. It doesn't matter what color you are or what religion you are. All lives matter. It doesn't matter how much money you have, whether you're black or white, how smart or how dumb you are. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because we are all supposed to be equal on this planet. In a truly fair and just world, All lives matter. End of story. Okay, guys, brings us to the end of the presentation for this evening. Please don't forget to check out our new website, stopsouthafricangenocide.org. And of course, for those of you who know, I am proudly South African. I was born there and lived there for 23 years. I am of Boer descent, and I'm very much in favor of fighting the Boer cause. And I will continue to do so for my fellow South Africans who are all still stuck there and those seeking a better life, and for the blessed and beloved farmers who are being killed off daily. My heart and prayers are with you. And I just want to say a big shout out to the various people in South Africa who are doing so much to raise awareness about this. Sunette Bridges and Steve Hofmeyer and people like Ed Begley, who's doing a lot overseas internationally. The various people who have come together to try and bring awareness to this, what's going on in South Africa, the genocide, on both sides of the color spectrum, be it black or white. It is going on. Civil war is looming. And we need to let people know how this all happened, the details, the background, the real history as to how we arrived at the point that we currently find ourselves at. And hopefully, by giving you guys the correct information, it'll help you make better decisions. If those of you are interested in finding out a little bit more about cultural anthropology, spells, cults, all that kind of thing, and of course the dark forces that orchestrate everything from behind the scenes, do check out my series Dragonology, seasons 1 and 2, 13 episodes in each season. It gives quite a thorough overview of what is going on behind the scenes, and it's an in-depth look at the control structure, the symbolism, the language, and how it all kind of fits together to keep us in a very acquiescent, enslaved spell. For those of you who want to catch some other broadcasts on Conscious Consumer Network, we do update our broadcast guide weekly, and we broadcast an average of 25 live broadcasts a week from broadcasters all over the world on a variety of topics. So please do check out our broadcast guide and see what we've got playing, where we've got playing, and stay tuned to us. We've got a lot of interesting stuff coming up. And of course, do visit the CCN shop. All proceeds go towards supporting free and independent media. We really do try to put messages on our gear that is kind of making a statement without saying a word, and there's a lot of very interesting stuff in there. So again, guys, please do support our network by visiting the CCN shop, or you can support our funding campaign. We are a totally free and independent news and media network that's totally uncontrolled by the government or intelligence agencies or anything like that. We are just totally for the people and totally in pursuit of a free, fair, just, peaceful, sustainable world. That is our only ambition. We're not trying to be rich. We're not trying to be famous. We're not trying to control the world. We're just trying to make it a better place, one day at a time, hopefully by educating one person at a time. So please support our funding campaign for this unique, totally free and independent media network that does live broadcasting from many parts of the planet. We thank you, as always, for supporting free and independent media, and do check out our website, consciousconsumerNetwork.tv. That is it from me, Melvi, and I will see you guys all again soon. Take care.
Thank you for tuning into CCN. This unique network is dedicated to free and independent media. CCN was created with the belief that information is the common heritage of all beings, which is why our live stream high-definition broadcast is easily accessible and free to view. If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Having produced over 1,000 shows in 2015, which are all archived on YouTube, we look forward to bringing you more groundbreaking, cutting-edge information in 2016. For more information on what is on, please check out our broadcast guide for weekly updates. CCN broadcasts in multiple languages and features some key voices of our challenging times who are all in pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world. CCN belongs to you, the people, and it is up to you all to keep this network on the air. Please contribute to the Network Support Fund or visit the CCN shop. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.